am just starting. All right, can you flip to the next slide, please? Just to go over some webinar logistics, we are planning for about 30 to 40 minutes. You guys are muted with no videos. Please use the Q&A or chat functionality to ask questions. We also have a survey that we're going to run now, a poll. It should be coming up right now. If you could please answer just really quickly what your role is and your familiarity with the Meetup platform. And we'll kind of be tailoring this session to how you guys answer. And then, of course, we will have a survey for evaluation at the end, which I will put in the chat. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our PR manager, Joe Bresler. He is our current PR manager for this year for District 4. He also has a lot of marketing experience. So please welcome Joe.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate the introduction, and also I appreciate for everybody to take a moment to take the poll. I am seeing the results here right now, and it's very helpful for me. I see a lot of people are the VP PRs for their clubs, followed by presidents, VP membership, and then other roles. I also appreciate the idea that most of the people here that are showing up today have little or no experience with Meetup. You're in the right place, because I'm going to really just take you through the basics and step you through a lot of things here that we can do. I'm going to actually just go ahead and end that poll, Jennifer. I'm going to take you through the basics. You can, if you'd like to share results, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, we'll keep on going. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. So this is me. I'm Joe Bresler. I do work with organizations to help them grow and scale their marketing and their reach, moving into new markets, moving into new audiences. Those are the types of things that really get me charged up. And I've really enjoyed the time here this year being the PR manager for the district. And I'm thrilled that we have so many folks here who are interested in learning more about the Meetup platform and more about PR and publicity tactics more generally. So thank you all for joining today. These are the things we're going to cover. As I mentioned, it's helpful to see what the audience's level of familiarity with Meetup is. I'm going to take you through the basics of what is Meetup. I'm going to help you with planning your Meetup event, do a demo in the middle. We'll talk about some promotion tips. I'll show you some resources, and we'll take questions at the end. The other assumption that I have here is that the majority of you would be using the District 4 Toastmasters Meetup group, as opposed to creating your own group. A lot of the information will be transferable if you were to go and create your own group. I'm just simply stating that that's not really the focus for today. It's about using the district's Meetup group to publicize your events. Let's dive right in. So first of all, what is Meetup and why do we actually use it for Toastmasters? And what I've found is that all the VP PRs are using at Toastmasters are using Meetup. It's one of those tools that's fairly standardized across Toastmasters from what I've heard. Hopefully you don't have different information, but what Meetup is really, it's a place. Think about it like a search engine to find and build local communities. It's really about connecting on a local basis. So of course, this last year we've been involved in this pandemic. It's been difficult because we haven't been able to meet online. We've been meeting online. We haven't been able to meet in person. But typically what this would be doing is acting like a search engine for local events, local activities, places where you could actually get offline and go and meet people in person. As of the last count, from what I was able to find, they have about 49 million users, and that's around the globe. So there are a lot of people on Meetup that are looking for things to do. And I would say, even though we're meeting virtually during the pandemic, as is everybody who's using the Meetup platform, it's a great time to become familiar with it. If you've never gotten to know Meetup in the past, become familiar with the platform, learn how to use it, and also learn how to publish and promote events on it because at some point we are going to be out of this pandemic and we will be able to then go back to in-person meetings. And you'll have all those new skills and all that information and experience to then take with you to go back into your local community and to run community events. Just as a side note, the D4 group has about 1,980 members. And I've put the link down at the bottom. I know you won't be able to click the links in the presentation at the moment, but you can see what the URL is. And you're welcome at some point to type that in if you'd like to do that. Although what I would suggest today would be maybe just follow along. As I mentioned, this is going to be a combination of slides and demo. So try to follow along and then take back those learnings, maybe take a few notes, but take back those learnings and go and explore a little bit more afterwards, after the session. The first thing I wanted to cover off is how you, as members of District 4, can gain access to the D4TM meetup group. I get this question frequently, and typically what we want is a current club officer, or we want a club officer who can vouch for a member who is helping them with PR efforts. A lot of times what we'll see is VPPRs, presidents, VPMs, even VPEs, who will be helping with the efforts. As we all know, sometimes it's the case where we need to wear multiple hats. So we're doing what we can with limited resources. But typically those are the types of officers that I would see coming in and who could use the platform. Again, if you'd like to have someone else help you with it at your club, maybe you've got several people doing different functions, then you can still contact me. The best way to do this is to use a club email address and create a club account on Meetup. The reason why I say that is because if you create an account that's just for your own personal usage, well, guess what? Next year, you're probably going to be handing off the PR responsibilities to somebody else. And you're going to go through a whole big handoff cycle. It would be a lot easier to basically say to them, here you go. I've created this account on Meetup. I've used our club email address. I'm going to give you access to the email address, and you can go ahead and start to take over your activities on Meetup as well. So once you've got that sorted, then go and join the D4 Meetup. And you just go in, you fill out a couple of questions, and you become a member of that Meetup group. And then what you do is you message the organizer. I'll get that message. I'll go and find you. So what I'm looking for is who you are, what your club is, what name of the club is. And I just want to make sure that you're the right person so that I can then add you into the list of users who can then organize events. When you become an event organizer, you'll get a set of very discrete responsibilities. You'll be able to manage events, and you'll be able to contact members about those events. And that's important for a few reasons, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. As you can see here, you're now part of a leadership team for Meetup, for the overall Meetup. There are a lot of other responsibilities. For example, the organizer has all the different responsibilities and privileges of the overall Meetup. And again, if you choose to use your own Meetup group, you will have to pay for it on your own out of your club's budget. So be sure to plan for that in the PR budget. But what we provide is a free service for the clubs across District 4 to be able to come in as event organizers. And you won't have to worry about managing group finances and the branding and all the rest of the stuff. You'll just need to worry about managing your events as an event organizer. All right, let's pause here very briefly, Jennifer, and I just want to see if there are any questions in the chat on anything we've covered so far. We'll stop a couple more times just to check questions or anything that comes up.
So far, I am seeing no questions.
Okay. All right. Let's dive into planning your event. So now, where have we come so far? You've learned a little bit about Meetup. You have now learned how to get in contact with us and what sort of responsibilities you'll have when you get up on the Meetup platform as an event organizer. Now it's going to be really important for you to understand a few basics about the platform and running an event on the platform, because this will help you with the planning. As I mentioned before, this was originally built for in-person events. So it does take into consideration things like the mile radius from the user, the date and time, the topic, and the group name. All of these things are important for how the Meetup system filters and sorts and allows people to browse events near them. That's the key thing, events near them. I wanted to also give you visibility to what D4 Toastmasters has listed as the set of topics that it believes are relevant. I feel like these topics are very relevant across all Toastmasters. We're only allowed a limited number of topics that we can be participating in, and these are them. It's all about personal development, overcoming fear of speaking, self-improvement, quite a number of other things here, professional networking and presenting and communicating and building your leadership skills. These are important things to be aware of because these are the types of things that will go into how someone actually finds you on the platform and how you need to think about how you plan for your event. When you do go into the platform, make sure you have everything ready to go up front. It'll just make your life a lot easier. That can be everything from the content for the event. It should be the date and time, the duration. You'll be asked these things in the platform. You can even put in a picture, and I encourage you to put in pictures. There's the size of the picture that you need to put in, which is a 1200 by 675 pixels. And if you use a tool like Canva, or you have someone in your club who is very proficient with things like Photoshop, they can help you with those pictures and with cropping and resizing things in the proper formats. Make sure you have the venue. And in this case, since the pandemic has started, Meetup has basically said, just tick this one box and you can show this as an online event. They've also added that to their ability to search, their search and their filters. Some other things that you may want to have readily available to yourself when you're planning your event are things like a Zoom registration page, the club website link, your social media links for the website or for your club, and your club email address so that people can contact you. I'm going to go back to one of the items, which was the Zoom registration page. We'll cover this again in a few minutes, but the key thing here is that some clubs are actually putting the live link to their event, to their Zoom, to go ahead and just jump right into the Zoom. And what's happened is, in some cases, they've had some disruptors coming into the meeting. What I've noticed is that clubs like Point of Order are putting the Zoom link to a registration page, and they're telling people in the content, this is what we're all about or what our meeting is about. Go to this Zoom registration page and register over there. And if you do that, what you want to say is, thank you for RSVPing here, but take one additional step and go register over on Zoom. And you can do that very easily as well. A few points of advice. Make it compelling. If you just put a title out there that says weekly club meeting, and there are 3 or 4 clubs that are meeting at the same time, and you're going against another club that says, we're having the spectacular speechathon, the only one this year, some people might consider that more compelling than regular weekly meeting. So consider that when you're putting together the title and when you're putting together the content that will go into your meeting invitation. Do watch out for meeting event overlaps. Sometimes we can't help it because there are several clubs that are meeting at 6:30 on Thursday. But once again, just be aware, especially if you are going to plan a special event outside of your normal club meetings, just watch out for overlapping events and make sure that you're making your event appear very compelling and something that people will want to click on and want to go to. Let's cover off here in slides, and then I'll go show you in the platform, how do you actually schedule and run your event? As an event organizer, you'll be able to create an event, copy a prior event, and edit an event. And you can save drafts of your events as well. So if you're not quite ready to publish your event and to announce it, you can create a draft. Maybe you have someone on your PR team who's not the VP PR who goes and creates the draft and then shares it with the VP PR. You can certainly do that as well. But these are the 3 main actions, which is creating a brand new event, copying an old event, and then editing an event, especially one that might be live or one that might be in draft mode. And once you have your event set up, you'll be able to manage that event, contact the attendees, close off the event and close off RSVPs, edit it, copy it, and cancel it completely. Those are the main things that you'll be able to do as an event organizer. And I've shown here on the screen two different screens. One is the main page for the District 4 Toastmasters meetup event that shows you where you can access a button that says create event. That will only appear once you have the capabilities to be an event organizer. And then another dropdown, which is organizer tools. And that one shows manage attendees, contact attendees, etc. So once again, that will show up once you actually have an event that is either in draft mode or created, or that you've just copied and you're going to start to edit. Okay, before we jump into the demo, I noticed that there are probably a few questions that have come in. Let's go ahead and check in on the questions, the Q&A or the chat.
Yes, thank you. So the first question we have is, what are the benefits of using Meetup if you have a corporate club and aren't necessarily recruiting members of the general public?
That's a great question. So in this case, as a corporate club, Meetup may not be so relevant for you, unless I could think of one case where perhaps your Toastmasters club is sponsored by somebody in learning and development or in human resources, and they have a broader brand strategy to use social media. Well, this might be one place where they could do that. They can actually just have the property out there. They won't necessarily be inviting people to an event, so you won't be organizing events, but they may at least have some information out there to help people. But I agree, for a corporate club, it's probably less beneficial to use Meetup. I probably wouldn't do it unless I was doing it as part of an HR brand strategy.
Well, thank you for your answer on that. Another question is, how do you contact the meeting attendees?
Okay, that would be through that once the event is scheduled, and we'll go into a demo and we'll try to cover that there. But once the event is scheduled, you should be able to contact the attendees, and typically that's the people who have RSVP'd.
Okay, thank you. Some people are asking for the copy of the slide deck. Would you be willing to send that out afterwards?
Sure, we could do that.
And we have a question regarding the Zoom registration page. Is it a part of Zoom or a separate web page? And if it's a part of Zoom, how do you set this up?
Okay, so setting that up would be beyond the scope of this meeting. I would say maybe as part of the follow-up, we can find the Zoom, the link to the Zoom help files. Or if you're inclined to do it right now, I would just go ahead and fire up a browser with Google and just type in a simple search for Zoom meeting registration page setup or something like this. And then Zoom has really great content out there for help, to get help on just about any topic. So that's exactly what I do. I just search on Google, and that really helps me get straight to the heart of things.
And I think this question is kind of relates. Does the Zoom registration link allow us to get the email address of the person who registers?
You can certainly do that. You can certainly do that. Also, if you're on Meetup and you're really trying to manage as much as possible within Meetup, you can ask people questions, and that one of those questions can be to ask someone for their email address. And you do that when you're setting up the event.
And finally, we will be sharing the webinar, the recording of the webinar, but they're also asking who should they contact to gain access for meetups as an event organizer for the club.
Okay, yeah, let's roll back the slides real quick here. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so this is the slide that shows how to gain access to the D4 TM meetup. And what you'll do is you'll actually go and you'll join the D4 meetup first, the D4 TM meetup first. And then there's a button that says message the organizer. And then I'll get a notification. And I think there are a couple other people on there who will get notified as well. And then we can go ahead and verify who you are, which club you're with, and go ahead and give you access as a D4TM District 4 club officer. Okay.
Well, thank you. And that is all of the questions for now.
Okay. Let's break out of the slides. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for those questions. Let's break out of the slides for a moment here. And I'm going to need to move my controls here. All right, let's start at the beginning of things here. This is the URL that I gave previously. I'm going to actually see if I can drop that in chat. So folks can take that into the chat if you'd like to follow along. That's the URL you'll go to and that everybody will go to if you're making use of the District 4 Toastmasters meetup group. If you've already been assigned as an event organizer, you'll see this button here, which is Create Event. And in order to, let me actually just do a quick demo of things that you might want to take a look at. So first off, this is where you can see all the different members. These are members of the meetup group. They may be members of Toastmasters clubs already. They may not be. It's hard to tell. There isn't really a way to match everybody back. But those are all the members, and you can see all here. So you can go out and you can see people, see if you know other people. I really encourage that every VPPR ask everyone in their club to join. And we'll talk more about that during the promotion section of this presentation. But you're gonna want your people to join the meetup and then to help you with boosting the events and the posts. All right, so we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. So here's just a little bit about us. There's the location. This is set for San Francisco. The number of members. It's a public group, which means that everybody can join. Some people do have private groups. So if it was a case that a company has a Toastmasters group that is just for their company and they wanted to use a meetup platform, they could potentially do it. They wouldn't use the District 4 Toastmasters meetup, but they would use their own and they could have that just for their company if they'd like to do that, and they could keep it private. So that's another way that that could be done. This just tells a little bit about the District 4. This shows the events that are scheduled. Under this button is the members, there's photos, there's discussions, and there's also a more button. And here are the upcoming events. And this is important because I mentioned earlier in the slides that what the system is doing is it's filtering based on the date, and it's also based on the location. So those are some things to consider. All right, now I'm not going to call out anybody. I see my home club here as well. And but I will say, when you start to scroll through here, you'll say, okay, all right, I want to join an event. Now, which one is the most compelling for me? Maybe all of them are. Maybe one in particular is. But the main point here is just it's great when clubs are able to really give a little bit more information about the meeting and to make it really compelling. The other thing to note here is that there are really only 3 lines, and I call these the teaser lines. So when you're creating your content, you want to make sure you have the right date and time. You want to make sure you have a compelling event name. I'll call it your headline here. You want to make sure that that the location is in place here. Here is one that's an online event, so that's going a little more broadly. That'll be a different search mechanism. And then also those are your teaser lines. So try to get as best you can at putting the most compelling information in your first 3 lines. And if you need to try a few times to do it, by all means, go ahead and do it. You might even want to put an event in draft mode and then have someone else look at it in your club who also has access and say, is that compelling? Or would you click if you saw that? All right, so that's why it's important, because here I'm seeing lots of different clubs, lots of different clubs announcing things. And I'm going to wonder which one's the most critical. Now, if somebody had said, I have a open house, then I'd want to know more about that. I'd want to know if there's a special speaker. Those are the types of things to make it more compelling. Let's go ahead and dive in. Now, here's that menu item that I showed earlier that talks about what type of access you have. You can create an event, you can copy a past event, or you can edit a saved draft. In this case, I'm going to create a new event. And these are the things that I asked for you to have on hand previously when you're creating the event. So do it up front so you don't have to scramble around later. Create an event. There's your compelling title. There's the date and time. Here's the duration. These are the things that I mentioned earlier. Shorter is better, but it looks like 1 hour is kind of the 1 hour is the default here for the shortest time, or you can set a custom time as well. Set a start time and an end time. There's your featured photo. So make it fun, make it interesting, make it compelling, make it 1200 by 675. And there's a place for your description. And here's where you say, make this an online event. Now, if you do make it an online event, what'll happen is it will ask you for this to be filled in, and it won't let you go any further until you put something in there. Even if you do what they've shown here, zoom.us. So you have to fill that in, especially if it's an online event. But if you are going through and you're creating a registration page for your Zoom meeting, go ahead and put that registration page here. That's a better way to go. It'll be more safe. You'll be able to get the registrations. You'll be able to ask people for their email addresses, ask them other questions about who they are and what they're interested in. And you'll be able to capture that right in your Zoom platform. Now, if you have more than one person on your team who's working on creating this event, you can certainly add them here. They just need to be here, set up as an event organizer as well. These sections are optional. You can set them or not. Some people, what they do is they'll set up a repeating event because they want it to be for their club for every week. And that's perfectly fine. But that means then if it's your club meeting, at least still make that headline for your club meeting more compelling rather than just weekly club meeting. A lot of times what people do instead is they go ahead and they schedule each one individually. They put the information in there in the event box, the event details here in the description and the headline, and they customize it that way. Here's where you can ask members a question. You can ask them for their email address if you'd like to do that. But I think a better way to go is to just keep it into Zoom if you'd like to go and set up a registration page on Zoom. Some people may want to set an attendee limit. So you can do that here. If you are on a Zoom account or some sort of a web conferencing account and you have a limit, then by all means, go ahead and set a limit here if you'd like to do that. Otherwise, if you're not worried, then don't bother. You can allow guests, but what happens here is there's two things. There's a pro and a con. One is that you can potentially get somebody else to join. The con is that you won't get their information. So I'd like to keep that off. And I would prefer to then go with this registration page in Zoom and just ask everybody to register over there. RSVP start and end times. This is really when you're scheduling an event and you don't really want it to go live just yet. You can set it live and maybe just create some hype about it, but you don't want to take the RSVPs just yet, or you want to close the RSVPs by the start of the meetup. There's a few different things you can do. So if you need extra planning, especially if you're in an in-person event, you may actually want to close this a day before. And you can also start either now or one day before the event. There's different settings there, but I generally leave those off. This one's a tricky one now for Toastmasters. The platform does collect event fees, but I encourage you to read up on Toastmasters policies around collecting money. I also encourage you to become better familiarized with Meetup's policies around collecting money and the fees they charge. It also creates a scenario where you may have to give refunds. So you'll need to think about your refund policy as well. Typically for Toastmasters events, I leave that setting off. Okay, in this case, I haven't entered anything. Let me just enter a few things here. Compelling title. I'll go ahead and create the event. Duration 1 hour. I'm not going to put a featured photo. I'm just going to say demo purposes only. So don't do this. And in this case, I'm going to say it's not an online event, so that goes away. There are different venues that are here that you could choose from if you were meeting in person. But for now, don't worry about that. You can just go ahead and type something in here. It'll actually try to come up with a location. You could enter the location and then just put in the description that it's online if you'd like to do that. Actually, I'll go ahead and make this an online event and I'll just type in the Zoom URL so it just leaves me alone. Okay, so I can preview the event. So you're going to see what it looks like. You can see the other things that it is recommending as part of its engine. And it also allows people to star the event as well. That's kind of like you can go back to, you look at your start events. Okay, so I have this in preview mode. Now I get that button for organizer tools. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. Let me just see here. I'm going to go ahead and publish it, but I'm not going to announce it right now. What'll happen if I announce it, especially if I'm fiddling around in the system, you won't have a chance. It will just automatically send whatever you put in there out to everybody in the meetup group, and it'll start to promote it in its algorithms. So hold off until you're truly ready to do that. Click do it later. Now here, notice that this button changed, organizer tools. It had an abbreviated menu a few minutes ago or a second ago, which was edit event, copy, and cancel. Now I have two new menu items, contact attendees and manage attendees. If I manage attendees, what would happen is I can see that people who had RSVP'd, I could look them up here and I could do things to them, like I could remove them from their status or I could move them to a not going status if I just didn't have room for them or there was other reasons why I wanted to do that. I could also close for RSVPs, so just close the entire event. I can also download some attendee details, but in this case, it won't give you the email address from their account. If you asked for their email address as a separate question, it's quite possible you could get that through that question and have the details here. I can go ahead and contact attendees, and that should take me over to this form here, which allows me then to create an email. And the most important things here, there are a lot of important things to go through here, but the main one here is members who RSVP'd yes for this meetup, or if you really wanted to talk to people who said no, you could do that as well. You can also manage the wait list and bring people off the wait list. And you can also ping people if they haven't yet RSVP'd. There's a lot of different options here. I'd say go ahead and explore. And then it's just a very simple interface like you would use with Gmail or something else. You just enter a subject line, enter your message. You can also post this message on your group's message board, on the overall group's message board, if you'd like to do that. And you can simply hit preview or submit. So that's how you would then contact the members. You should be able to do that with an event organizer status. Okay, so that was creating your event. That was managing users, people who have RSVP'd for your event, and also contacting people for your event. Note that I can also share. These will actually be shared to the district's accounts. So this is a little bit of a backdoor for you to post to the district account for Facebook, for example. Or you could just simply copy a link and take that over to your own channels as well. So if you have your own Facebook account for your club, you could do that. You can just share the link, take it over there and announce on your own club's Facebook account. And you're still welcome to mention D4TM, District 4 Toastmasters in Facebook, and that will then go into the Facebook feed as well. All right, when you're finally done, then you can breathe a sigh of relief and go ahead and hit the announce button. One word of caution though, an additional word of caution, I should say, if you are publishing multiple events, please be kind to the recipients of the emails from the club and try to space out your announcements so that you're not announcing 20 or 50 events all at one time. The emails do go out and they go out in succession and they go out quickly. Okay, that wraps up the demo portion. Let's go ahead and pause here before I dive back in. Jennifer, were there any questions before I go back to the slides and carry on here?
Yes, there are a few questions.
Okay.
The first one is when they do a search by day of the week and time, they cannot find their club, which is 25 Alive. And I know that when you were searching, I saw them, you were scrolling down, I saw them. So is there a reason why they cannot find it when they do a search by day of the week and time?
It's hard to say. What I will say would be that there are thousands of meetups that are happening all across the globe. I would say try some of the other filters to see if you can then just toggle some switches to try to get that to show up. I will also mention that because this is basically a local search engine for events, typically I've had a little bit better results on a mobile device. And when you do go look through help pages and so forth in Meetup, you'll probably start to notice that they do talk about their mobile app quite a lot. And the mobile app before the pandemic was very helpful to me because I was in downtown San Francisco. I said, hey, I've got a couple hours to go here to kill some time. Let me go see what meetups are going on around me. And I'd go crash a meetup. And sometimes it would be great. Sometimes it would be a dud. So I'd move on to the next one. And I know that there were other people doing that because in some cases, I actually met up with the same people going from one meetup to the next.
And she did a follow-up question with the search she did was specific to San Francisco, California. So you would still add in the extra filters to try to dial down to it.
I would say you're going to have to play with it a little bit. It's probably not an exact or perfect science.
Mm-hmm. Another question is, this person has used canva.com to create a flyer. What other software is good for this purpose?
Well, some people have access to Photoshop and they're proficient with that. So for example, our webmaster, Ken Colley, he's proficient with Photoshop and he loves using that. So that's one option. I would say there are probably other options. You could even do things very simply downscale. For example, go create a PowerPoint presentation and create a screenshot, take a screenshot. And at least on the Mac, and I've used Macs for years, I haven't used PCs in a while, but I know on the Mac, when I create a screenshot, it'll allow me to drag the window of what I'm going to screenshot, and it will actually tell me the pixel size, both height and width. So that's really helpful for me to then be able to create that window and then move it around and then take my screenshot, and then that's my final file. Those are just some options that you might want to consider. But once you're in Canva and you've built something out, you got to go back to Canva to go reconfigure it. If you're struggling with something like the size of the image, go back to that 12, I think it was what, 1200 by 562 or something, and go to Canva and go and create a custom size. You have to go up to the top menu on the right, I believe it is. And where it says to create a new item, I think it's a plus. Then you go and create a custom size, type in your pixel dimensions. It'll create a new canvas. And then you can start to play with your different elements there, whether it's a photo or text or what have you.
And someone just typed in that there is a free image editor. It's a bit like Photoshop called GIMP. It's apparently very flexible and you can download it. So if you're interested, you can try that.
Yep, GIMP is one of those ones that's free.
So
it's open source, I should say.
With California protection law, before we can post a photo of members on our event page, do they need to obtain written or verbal permission?
Okay, so I believe what you're speaking about is CCPA, which is the privacy protection law that went into place. Typically, what that is about protecting someone's right to say, please remove my information from your database. So typically what that'll apply to will be things like, for example, I logged into a website or I created a new account. I decided I didn't want to continue with that website. And I also don't want to leave my information on there. I can go and contact somebody at that website's company and say, please delete my information. That's typically what CCPA is focused on. For getting a photograph and posting that online, it's a little bit different. Typically, if you are going through and you're showing a group of people similar to the one that we have on the screen right now, where everybody is in a conference format, it's kind of hard. You could probably pick out specific people that you knew. I see one or two that I know that are in that photo shoot, but it's pretty hard. So that type of a thing where it's a group is it's generally accepted that people just you don't need to get documents signed from every single person to give you the rights to use that photo, to use their likeness in the photo. But if you're in a situation where you've got maybe an outside speaker, they're working on their personal brand, they may want or they may not want you to take photos and to post them. I would say work with that individual specifically to find out exactly what they want. It's going to depend. I would say probably the best thing to do would be type up your case of exactly what you're trying to do, what you want to use, and where you want to use it, for what purpose, and send an email to the Toastmasters International and have them, I believe there's PR at toastmasters.org, toastmastersinternational.org, and send an email to them to get their advice, because they do have lawyers that are on it. They do have release documents. They have a lot of things that will help you out as a Toastmaster.
Thank
Okay.
you. So, do you have an ability to do analytics, such as how many page views versus registrations?
Yeah, I actually, in the past, I used to set up Google Analytics on Meetup. When I was preparing for this presentation, I was diving in just to see if that was still possible, and I did not find it. And I did some searches and I did not find any information about doing that. That would have been the one primary way to do it. The other thing to do would be actually, let me ask, are there other questions in the chat? Because this actually will tie into the remainder of the presentation.
Yeah, there are other questions in the chat. And so we
Okay.
could,
So let's park that question because I'm going to cover it very briefly in about 2-3 slides. What else do we have on the radar for us in the Q&A?
do you get a lot of international participants through meetups? This club is having a lot of guests from overseas. However, they currently are not using meetups.
It's going to depend. Remember that this is meant to be a local event search engine. It's going to depend. I think probably a lot of the international people are coming over because they are going to the Toastmasters website and just doing random searches there. Or they might be targeting a city and doing Google searches. Those are the two things that I could think about that might be driving international registrants or attendees.
And will photos that exceed the minimum pixel requirements work on Meetup?
They'll just be cropped. So there are a few here. You can see here, there are some that are cropped. I'm not sure what this one is, but they go into a photo gallery and then they just get cropped in different areas. So that's how that works. And so here's different photo albums and so forth. Typically they'll be cropped. So the sizes that are mentioned are really the best ones for showing on your event page and showing in the previews. Here's where that image shows is more like a thumbnail format. Okay, other questions?
That's all of the questions for now.
All right, great. I'm just watching the time. I want to make sure that we finish within an hour. We did promise people that we'd make it a little bit earlier than an hour. All right, let's talk about promotion. I want to say up front that for Meetup, along with all the other social media platforms, it's difficult for this to be a set it and forget it type of a scenario, meaning that you go in, you set up your event, and then you ignore it for the next 2 months. I can guarantee you, you're not going to get as much out of the platform as you would if you were more engaged. There are some things that Meetup does for you. Those are primarily email promotions. So if you are in that scenario where you want to start your new group and do it on your own and pay for it from your club funds, you can certainly do that. Meetup will send an automated message to everybody that has subscribed to those areas of interest that I showed earlier. And they'll say, hey, folks, there's a new group out there. It's in your area, and it's one of these ones that matches to your interests. You should consider going and joining this group. That's automated from Meetup. You don't have a chance to edit the information or anything like that. So you would have needed to set up your group with as good of information and compelling of information as possible. The next one is when a new event is scheduled, and basically that's an announce button. When I showed you that red button in the demo and I said, watch out because it will announce it right away, that's that one. That's what that button does. You have to click it and then everything else is automatic from there. Meetup does a great job of sending a lot of emails to a lot of people, depending on how many groups you've joined or how many interests you've expressed. It will send you reminders. It will send you things like the week ahead. Don't forget, the day before, it'll send you an email that says, tomorrow, join 5 people at this group or at this event. You can also, I showed you earlier how to actually send an ad hoc event notification as well. So I showed you how to create that email and to send it out. I call that ad hoc, and that would be manually created. Don't forget that you also will generally show up in the calendar listings based on the different filters like your location, if you're online, etc. You may be competing with thousands of other events happening at that same time. So that might make it challenging. But it does provide you with that event search engine with the topics and the location being the main things that it's looking for. Some things that you need to do on your own. So if you have and are maintaining a list of people who have been past participants, past members, current members, guests, anybody you can think of, you can certainly send out the information to your email list. You should definitely post your information to the website, talk about it on social media, and use word of mouth with your existing members to get them to talk up Toastmasters and talk up your club to potential new members. But those are all things that you need to do. Meetup won't help you with that. Some things, these are some what I call some power tips for promotion. I mentioned earlier that for pretty much any social platform, you've got to engage with it in order for it to do some additional work for you. Some of those opportunities are things like the following: RSVPs. So if you're the only person who RSVPs to your meetup, guess what? It's probably not going to be shown anywhere. It probably will just sit there on the D4TM group, and it'll come up when your date comes up, and that's about it. But the more people that RSVP, then the more buzz will be created, because it will start to say things like, and send alerts on things like, join 20 other people at this special event and don't miss out. And basically the search engine pays more attention to that level of engagement. So my first suggestion to you here is get all of your club members to have accounts on Meetup and get them all to RSVP, because then it will start, the search engine will then start to notify other people and see that there's some buzz going on, and it will start to create an echo chamber or more of a spread of that information. The next thing that you can do is actually strike up conversations. This can be done in that section even on the D4TM group where you can reach out to people individually. You can post things into the threads for the conversations area. You can start conversations and people will start to see, because it is set to notify people of when new conversations, new threads are started. So that's another way to get more out of the platform. Something else that I've noticed that some organizers do is they do personal one-on-one outreach. So they'll have someone go into the Meetup platform and they'll actually contact individuals and say, hey, I see that you've expressed interest in the past, or I see something about you. I wanted to let you know about this group, and I think it would be a great fit for you based on A, B, and C. Something else you could do is contact other group members. Now, remember, we are members of topics of things like professional development, personal development, communications, presentations, etc. Find other people that are running groups with those same attributes and say, hey, I've got an event going on and I wanted to tell you all about it. Would you mind posting this information on your meetup? And sometimes people will do that. So that's a great way to get some cross promotion going. And then all of a sudden that'll trigger an alert to all of their member base. And it will also start to draw people back over to your event. Something else you can do for your event is find a sponsor. And what I suggest there is, it is Toastmasters. Again, go back and look at the Toastmasters rules for sponsorship and for taking money. But it's very easy to just partner up with another organization in your community, like an organization that has similar objectives, and ask them to sponsor a club event, or even to help you to cross promote amongst their members as well. And encourage all of your members at the club level. Again, get them onto the platform, encourage them to share with their network as well. All right, just very briefly, we are coming up to the last few slides here. I would suggest, if you'd like to share other things that you've tried and that you felt were worthwhile, go ahead and share those in the chat window. And I'm going to cover one or two more slides and we'll come back to that. There were a couple of questions earlier, or at least one question earlier, about how to measure success. Here are a few different ways to do that. One is to actually go ahead and create a survey form. You can include that in your event invitation. If you'd like to do that, you can do it as a follow-up. Create a survey form through Google Forms, SurveyMonkey. There's probably any number of other options for creating forms. Go ahead and create a survey and ask people, what did you like? What did you dislike? How could we do better? It's the same sort of thing that we do with Toastmasters all the time. We're always looking for feedback. We'd always like to know what we did well and what we could do better next time. So feel free to do that with what you're engaging in here on Meetup. You can create tracking links. This was something that was referenced earlier. You can search on Google. I've noticed now that there are a lot of different services that are free or paid that will allow you to create tracking links. Simply use that terminology and search on Google. Explore to see what works best for you and see what you can do. There are a few different services. Again, some of them are free, some of them are paid. The other thing that you should do is, in your meetings, go ahead and ask people. This is always the best way. Do it on your guest sign-up list. If your guests are signing in or on a list, or you're collecting that information ahead of time, just simply ask, how did you hear about us? How did you find us? Those are some very simple ways to track the success. Again, I believe in the past that Google Analytics was one of the possibilities here. I just was not able to find it in this case. I think it might not be a possibility any longer. So apologies for that. Okay, let's pause as we start to wind down. Were there any other things shared in the chat that people said, hey, this is something I've tried to promote my event and it worked really great?
I have not seen anything yet in the chat.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and wind this down. Jennifer, thank you for that. These are some links to be aware of. So the Meetup group, I put that in the chat earlier. If you have questions on the Meetup platform, by all means, just go ahead and go to help.meetup.com. They have a pretty good way of searching and pulling up content. I want to also encourage everyone to use the brand manual from Toastmasters, and that's a link to it. When we're engaging on social media or anywhere in the public and in the community, We want to make sure that we're staying on brand and that we're providing a very consistent look and feel, a design, and a tone of voice that would be consistent with the overall brand of Toastmasters. And I will be doing some brand training in the next week or two on that. And I'll announce that to the Toastmasters District 4 team as well, so that everybody can benefit from that. But I do encourage you to go ahead and look at the brand manual and also take a look at the image library that's available from Toastmasters as well. And you can do a search on Google for simply Toastmasters stock images, and that'll bring it right up here. Same thing for brand manual as well. So those are links that you will get after the session today. You can also do Google searches and they come up fairly quickly. All right, I mentioned a moment ago that we're going to do a branding workshop. That'll be the next one up. I believe that's probably pretty important based on just different things I've been seeing created out there. We want to make sure we have a professional brand and that we're consistent with Toastmasters overall. To be scheduled would be engaging on Eventbrite and exploring other PR options. What I'd like to encourage you to do would be to fill out the survey that we'll provide at the end of this session and go ahead and give us ideas as to where you're struggling, where you need help, or where you want to explore more deeply. And I'm happy to then consider how those can fit into additional topics as we go here. I want to also mention, although it's not in the slides, that we have 3 awards that we give for PR each year. That's coming up. So your timing now is good, but it's going to be short. So that would be going and creating a video, a promotional video for your club, having the best website, and oh boy, the last one I'm gonna I'm gonna blank on the last one, but it's your website, video, and one more. I'll have to put it in the slides and do the follow-up on that. But you can find more information about PR awards on D4TM. I wanted to run through these common questions that I've gotten before. Basically, am I able to collect money? Please go and check out Protocol 8.2 and the club constitution. I mentioned earlier about whether or not it makes sense for you to run your own meetup group or to come and join the D4 meetup group. That's going to be up to you. I just encourage you to be aware of what you're getting involved in and make sure that if you create your own group, that you have someone to manage it. We talked earlier about posting the Zoom link on the meeting pages. One of the suggestions there is to go ahead and post a sign-up form for Zoom as an alternative. I will leave that to you to decide what's best for you. And we talked about getting help. All right, with that, Jennifer, I see we're close to time here, but I wanted to just open it up for any last questions people have before we wrap.
I don't see any more questions, although it was noted that it's best newsletter.
Best newsletter, yes, absolutely.
And
maybe that's one of the things we should do.
And the feedback survey is also in the chat. If you could please take a few minutes and fill that out.
Great. All right, with that, I want to say, please send the survey. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for taking this first step on your journey. I know many of you are newer to Meetup, so thank you for taking that first step. If you're not so new to Meetup and you're familiar with it, thank you for coming here. And hopefully you've been able to get some new tips and tricks and understand the platform better, in particular, how to use it to drive attendance to your events and to your club and to help your club thrive. With that, I'm going to close. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.